This is Talk is Sheep, a podcast by the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Come along as we take conversations that matter to you into the high alpine.
Good evening, Mr. Hamilton.
I don't know what to say to that. It kind of made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, but in a good way. If you get where I'm going with that. It was a little weird.
Yeah, get you out of your comfort zone. Yeah. Got to keep it spicy. So,
exactly.
Cool episode. So nice even number 90, and it's very fitting that we would have former chairman of the Wild Sheep Foundation, Brett Jefferson, on the Talk of Sheep. He is absolutely fierce when it comes to conservation. He was at the helm when I got involved with the Wild Sheep Foundation, and Brett is a power horse. He just is so passionate about conservation, and when it comes to doing the right thing for wild sheep, do not stand in his way because he will run you over. He truly is passionate. He gets stuff done. He's one of those guys that goes out and gets after it and gets things done. It's pretty cool.
Totally. I had a chance to meet him in person in 2020 in Reno at the Sheep Show, and you knew right away he's quiet, he's meek, he's humble, but as you said, when he's got a cause in front of him, he's a pit bull, right? And very, very rare in the 90 episodes we've recorded do I say nothing. And I don't think I said an entire word this episode because I was just listening. And a guy who's done decades worth of wild sheep and conservation in general, you listen when he speaks. And I was trying to absorb everything that he said. And it was, before we knew it, we were over an hour and wrapping up. It was crazy. And yeah, just totally enjoyed listening to him.
Well, we didn't even scratch the surface on half that he's done. And like I said, it's a privilege to get to talk to Brett. It's a privilege to serve beside him, and he is a person that puts his money where his mouth is. Decades in the wild sheep business, and how many sheep's he taken off the mountain. And for our listeners, we're not going to answer that question. We'll get to that, but he's a guy that puts sheep on the mountain. He doesn't take it off, and he's just a powerhouse when it comes to wild sheep conservation, and somebody I know that I will look back on my tenure, and I will. He will be one of those individuals that I will always recall that he goes above and beyond when it comes to wild sheep and conservation. So pretty cool.
Yeah, as you said, above and beyond, and like you said, puts his money where his mouth is. He's our newest life member, right?
Yeah, yeah. So he was up at Jurassic. He's been at we had the COVID thing, but he's been up here for a number of years for the event, and was up fishing, and he reached out and said, "Yeah, I'm getting a life membership," and sure enough, yeah. So he's what is he, life member number 604, 605? I can't remember the number, but it's an honor to have Brett on our list as a life member. And of course, you look across the fence, and he obviously is given to a number of other conservation organizations across the landscape. So pretty cool.
Yeah, but by the time this drops, though, you're going to be on the mountaintop, aren't you?
Yeah. So I'll be out of service hopefully when this comes out, or I will be out of service.
You will be,
unless something goes severely awry.
I don't see that.
So pretty excited about that. Just and again, Steve, we talked about this. Of course, I was on the last podcast as a guest, and for me, this is my reset. This is when I get refocused, recaged, and for me, I just get back to the basics. Turn my phone off, and it powers me throughout the year. It's so, and our members are like that. Our listeners, we know you're like that too, and that's what this common theme that brings us all together is as sheep conservationists and hunters and all that sort of stuff too, right? So pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. So.
Magazine. So, we've got the new face of the magazine. We've been getting some feedback on that. We'd love to hear what you guys think about the magazine. And we also have a couple of requests. So if you got any hunting stories, we'd love to hear from you. So there's two types of stories you can give us. You can give us a full-on hunting story with a bunch of pictures and 1,500 to 3,000 words. That's one. But if that's a little daunting for you and it's a little bit too much, we have our member highlights. It's 50 words, roughly. Give us 50 words, 1 or 2 pictures. We need high-res photos, minimum of 1 to 2 megabytes. And get that to us. Get them in the magazine. 50 words is nothing. It can take you 10 minutes to write it, 5 minutes to write it. We'll edit it for you. And it's just a great opportunity to show our members what we're doing out there in the landscape. If you're hunting, fishing, recreating, we'd love to hear from you. As well, take the magazine. We're giving away a couple Sitka hats thanks to our conservation partner, Sitka Gear. Take a picture with the magazine. The one that takes it furthest away with in context. So, if you're on a sheep hunt in, Central Asia, send us a picture with that magazine. And the person that takes the photo the furthest away is going to win that contest. And then also we're giving away a hat to the most unique photo. So what do we say? Don't do anything illegal, unethical, or unsafe, but give us some photos. Send us some photos in. And we need those by October 1st is the deadline for this issue. So, yeah, send us stuff in, communications@wildsheepsociety.com. But, Steve, you do our social media, so, yeah, do it through Facebook, Instagram, any of that stuff, and we'll get it there too.
Yep, absolutely. So, on that note, let's get you up the mountain.
Yeah, can't wait, buddy. Episode 90 with former Wild Sheep Foundation chairman, Mr. Brett Jefferson. Enjoy the listen.
Across Canada and throughout the world, if you come across a campfire in the woods, on a mountaintop, or next to a river, you'll find warm company and friendly people gathered around. Regardless of your lifestyle or place you call home, we invite you to learn more about what it means to be a hunter in the modern era. If you love the outdoors, care about where your food comes from, and are concerned for the future of wildlife and the environments that they need to survive, pull up a seat. We have a story to tell. Welcome to our campfire.
Mr. Brett Jefferson, Talk is Sheep. Awesome. It's so fantastic to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. It's just so excited to be with you guys today.
So, Brett, there's so much I want to talk about, but I want to start off with our personal relationship. I got started in this sheep community I'm relatively a newcomer. I haven't been around a long time. And, I was working at the chapter level in BC here. And kind of when I got introduced to the foundation was right in your initial term as chair. So you'd been on the board of directors with the foundation for 6 years plus. And I you were you brought me in. I felt that you were a mentor for me on the board. You were of course you were the chairman, but our leader. And I really felt that, you took me under your wing and brought me into the fold with the foundation and provided a lot of direction and leadership and support for somebody that didn't have a clue what he was getting into. So, it's really exciting for us to have this conversation today. There's so much, I've worked with you on the board for, I think it was 3 years we were on the board together, but of course more than that with other dealings over the years. And there's so much I don't know about you, and there's so many stories that I'm so excited to hear about and what makes Brett Jefferson tick. So there we go.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Awesome. So, okay. So, Brett, let's kind of go back to the, to the beginning years. How did you become a conservation superhero? How does that happen? Do you just wake up one day and throw a cape on, or sort of, what's the evolution? What led you to an interest in wild sheep and to conservation? And I know you've been doing this for decades. This is not something that just sort of popped up in the radar. So can you give us a background on that if you don't mind?
Sure, I'd happy to. As you know, I grew up in Boulder City, Nevada, which is a small town in southern Nevada that's near the dam and Lake Mead National Recreation Area. And when I was a kid, we didn't lock our doors, or we left our keys in the cars in the driveway, and but we had a lot of bighorn sheep that were around our town, and the bighorn sheep liked to periodically come into town, and they would frequent several parks and hang out. And there was kind of a little phone tree in the community where if the sheep were at a park, some people would call some people, and here pretty quick everybody would know that the sheep were there, and you could go and view them and get pretty close to them. The sheep aren't the sheep that are in the Lake Mead National Recreation Area. They're not hunted, so they're not particularly afraid of human contact. They'll let you get fairly close to them. So I was very accustomed to that as I was growing up as a kid. My dad was, he loved the outdoors. He loved camping and shooting sports, and he was a bird hunter in particular, but also hunted small game too. And it really wasn't until I moved away from Boulder City to go to college that I really realized how special that was to see those bighorn sheep so frequently in Boulder City. So I longed for that, and whenever I came home, it was a big deal. Let's go look at sheep. Let's go find some sheep. Desert bighorn had a special place in my heart. I worked for a while for Lake Mead Conservation Area, and we would go out, and I did drafting for campgrounds for the Park Service. And we would go out and we would do surveys and locate these campgrounds and whatnot. But we constantly would run into herds of bighorn sheep and bands of bighorn sheep here and there and everywhere. And so they've had a special place in my heart for a long time. When I purchased the business here in Reno, I came up and got involved with a group called Nevada Bighorns Unlimited, which is based out of Reno, and I went to their dinners and their fundraisers and some of their projects. They build a lot of water developments, and eventually one of the veterinarians reached out to me, and after I became a Gold Ram Life member, and he said, we really need someone like you on our board. So I got on the NBU Reno Board of Directors, did that for a few years, got elected to secretary and then treasurer, got kind of stuck in the treasurer position. That happens frequently to me, and did that for a number of years, and then I met Gray Thornton when when Wild Sheep Foundation was coming back to the Reno area for their annual convention. I think that was 2008 or so. Met Gray, and we visited, and I was kind of a liaison between Wild Sheep Foundation and Nevada Bighorns Unlimited. Gray, at one point, I don't remember exactly when, but I went and visited him in Cody, toured the office. We spent some time together, and he said, you really ought to think about running for the board of directors for Wild Sheep Foundation. We really need some conservation-minded folks, and you're in the middle of it. So I did that, and had a lot of friends that I met through several of the chapter and affiliate summits that helped promote me throughout the various chapters and affiliates, and I ended up getting elected, and then spent just finished up 9 years on the board of directors. During that time, I moved back to the Las Vegas area, which is my home, kind of my home turf, and got involved with the Fraternity of the Desert Bighorn. At the same time that I was director for Wild Sheep Foundation, I had worked my way up to the president of the Fraternity of the Desert Bighorn. Did that for a number of years, and then had to set that aside when I got elected chairman of the Wild Sheep Foundation Board of Directors, and just finished up, a 9-year stint on the board of directors for Wild Sheep Foundation, and really excited about the things that we've done over the last decade, and where we've come and where we're going. So that's kind of how I got to where I am, I suppose, with Wild Sheep.
Well, phenomenal story, Brett, and interesting to note that over these past 9 years, the foundation has seen unprecedented growth, unprecedented conservation dollars put back on the landscape, and you were involved through that 9-year term and at the helm for the last 3 years. So phenomenal accomplishments. I had the opportunity to see it for a short period of time, the 3 years we served together, 2-3 years. And I have to say it's been one of the great joys of me being on the board is working with you, under you, Brett, and I learned so much. But during that time, there was an interesting story, and I think it was right when I joined, and you tell a story, and I'd love for you to tell it for us today, about when you first got elected to the board, and you got involved, and, I showed up to the board, eyes wide open, and not knowing what to do, what to expect. But I remember you telling me when you first joined the board, and can you share that story with us about, I don't want to ruin it, but do you recall the story that when you joined the board and something?
I think that I do remember the story that you're referring to. When I got on the board, there were, at that time, there were three officer positions. There was a secretary, and then a vice chair, and then a chair. And one of the retiring directors that had been, vice chair and chair and whatever, and he and I were visiting. I think that it was probably one of the first board meetings, and he had mentioned to me that it's going to take you a few years to get your feet on the ground, and feel comfortable with what goes on here at the Wild Sheep Foundation and on the board of directors, and I suppose maybe I was a little bit cocky in those days or what, but I told him that I didn't have a few years. I was here all in right now, and I wanted to fully engage right away. I wanted to be on committees. I didn't hide my desire to work my way into the chairs and to help serve as in leadership. So that's kind of been my mantra. I suppose throughout my entire time with Wild Sheep Foundation is I've kind of felt like wild sheep can't wait for our help, so I can't wait to help either. I'm ready to go.
I love that story, and I've got to see that firsthand. Everything you did was with intention, with drive, and giving 100%. And I still see that you're doing that now. You're not currently serving on the board because you've termed out, but you're still giving that 110%. So, but one of the questions I have for you, Brett, is you've been in the wild sheep community for a long time. You've been there for literally decades. The foundation for a decade plus. Can you talk to us, if you could kind of single out one of your big achievements or your biggest achievement? I know it's kind of hard to segregate that and kind of putting you on the spot, but when you think back over, decades of giving and the awards you've won, the things you've done, what's the biggest achievement that you feel that you've given to the conservation community and wild sheep?
Well, I think there was a a moment in time when I was chair when we, when I first got on the board, we were kind of not in a great financial situation. We were just coming out of the lawsuit years, and things were very difficult for a while. And we spent a number of years organizing, the foundation, building a structure, I helped build a document library for the foundation, to be able to store and archive documents, and there was a point when I became chair where we made a big transition, a big switch in our emphasis from saving money and becoming financially secure. We made this switch to, we are now focused 100% on putting money on the ground and doing conservation work for wild sheep. And for me, that transition, that was a real super point of inflection in the Wild Sheep Foundation's commitment to conservation and conservation funding from trying to support itself. So I would say that's probably, for me, that's probably one of the most impactful events that occurred while I've been involved with wild sheep.
That's really cool, and the a lot of people that I know that, and not everybody knows the back history of the foundation. How far it goes back and the challenging years that the foundation went through. But we look now, and people equate the foundation with doing things. They putting money on the ground. It's one of those organizations that puts their money where their mouth is, and I think that's one of the things the foundation does well. So it's really interesting to hear that, and that's kind of the only foundation I know as well. But there were those years, there were those lean years, and the lawsuit and that sort of stuff. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that? So those early years, and I hear Wayne Henderson talk a little bit about this and stuff too, where those early years where, it was touch and go, post lawsuit, and the foundation wasn't in this really strong financial position that we enjoy today, right? So can you talk about that stewardship? Because you were part of that process. You came right at the ground floor when all that, the foundation was struggling a bit, and to build it into the powerhouse it is today. Can you talk us through a little bit about what you guys went through in that transition?
Yeah, I think so. When the foundation hired Gray Thornton to be president and CEO, it was a real feather in our cap, and what a dynamic person. What an incredible leader. But Gray walked into kind of a tempest in a teapot kind of situation. The foundation was not secure. And we had, taken a loan against, our life member fund to try to get us out of, that lawsuit. And the lawsuit was, of course, over what you call 4 dead sheep, which is, when you look back on it now, a pretty silly thing for conservation organizations to be wasting money in court, suing each other over. But that was before my time, and I feel like the board that I walked into was kind of the reconstruction board. It was like, okay, how are we gonna? We need to rebuild. Excuse me. We need to get out of this situation. And how are we going to do that? So early on, the board was very, very focused on being fiscally Well, not that they're not focused on being fiscally competent now, but then it was really tight, and it was. I mean, we were considering ways of how are we going to make payroll and things like that. So it was a difficult time for the foundation, and the board persevered, the staff persevered. Gray led the way. The board of directors led the way, and we all kind of pulled our bootstraps up and turned eventually in about 3 years we started turning the corner, and things really started looking positive and headed in the right direction.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's certainly a turnaround story for the books. So over that time frame, there's been a lot of changes and a lot of new opportunities, and so over. If you look back now and you look to where we're at today, and you look on the horizon, looking forward, what are some of the big challenges for the foundation that you see that kind of lie ahead? What are some of the things that are come to mind for you that we need to be thinking about, and risks that because we're in a great position financially. We got tons of supporter memberships at an all-time high. We're really the future looks bright. So is there things on the horizon that are of concern for you, and things that that you keep you up at night? Or
well, the disease issue is probably the biggest thing that weighs on my mind as far as wild sheep conservation goes. I was in Las Vegas. It was about the time that I got transferred to Las Vegas, where there was a disease event, which is another term for all age die off, in the old dad complex in Southern California, in the Mojave Desert, and it was a pretty major die off, and I don't know that individuals were ever prosecuted, but it was, the word was that, it came from, some very sick domestic sheep that got essentially dumped out in the desert, and they were sick and they were left to die, and they came in contact with some desert bighorn sheep, and next thing you know, you've got this huge die-off going on in the Mojave National Preserve and the old dad complex. Well, it took right about 18 months for that disease event in Southern California to reach Las Vegas. And it didn't just reach Las Vegas through one mountain range. It reached Las Vegas through the entire surrounding mountain ranges. So we had sheep that were dying in multiple mountain ranges. I even went out on a hike in the Red Rock Mountains, which was really close to town. You can be in the Red Rocks and on a trail in about 20 minutes. And there were literally, dead sheep bodies all over, easy to find. So that was, that's very impactful for me, and it helps you to realize how important these animals are, and how they're entrusted. We're entrusted with their care, and we've come since that time. We've come so far in our understanding and knowledge and mitigation of diseases in desert bighorn sheep and thinhorn sheep through science. That the science is kind of catching up to where we wanted it to be about a decade ago. and we know a lot. We know a lot more than what we knew a decade ago, and I think that's really made a huge difference in the conservation of wild sheep. But now we're in the, to me, we're kind of in the roll up our sleeves stage. Okay, we know what we have to do. We know what's going to happen, and we know that there's things that we can do with domestic sheep to improve herd health and minimize and mitigate contact with wild sheep, and we're starting to make some progress in that regard. But we've got a long ways to go. But I think that we have some very clear direction now that we didn't have a decade ago.
Excellent. So it's interesting. We look back to the 60s where, what was the numbers, 25,000 sheep or something, to, today we're talking 85,000 pushing up towards 100. So, 3-4 times where we were. So, we can make the argument that bighorn sheep are doing quite well under the Foundation's watch. The Foundation started in the 60s. So great work there. So now, we're seeing work being done by the Foundation in Mexico. There's a Mexico initiative. And I know, Brett, you were pivotal in the Asia initiative, that there was a lot of work done in Asia to support wild sheep there. If you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about the work that's involved there and how important that is moving forward for the Foundation.
Well, there were actually in Central Asia, our initial contacts there came from a Facebook contact, and this is back when I was working with Nevada Bighorns Unlimited, and a fellow in Kazakhstan who eventually has become a very good friend of mine, named Max Levin. He reached out to me and he said, I want to know more about these water developments. I want to understand them better. And I would be getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and he would be coming in at 5 o'clock at night. And we would visit through Facebook and using Facebook's translator, which has come a long way in 10 years too. Translating back and forth from English to Russian can be pretty problematic, but it's really come a long way through the process. But so we talked a lot about water developments and what some of the success stories that have occurred in Nevada and throughout the West with water developments, and understanding that the early settlers and the railroads, wherever they went, they stole wildlife's water and prevented wildlife from being able to use those water sources that were readily available to them. So through these large-scale water development initiatives in various states, we've been able to bring water back to wildlife and help desert bighorn sheep as well as all other wildlife flourish. So there was a contingent that was coming from Kazakhstan to the SCI convention, and Wild Sheep Foundation was going to be their ambassadors and their tour guides of the SCI convention in Las Vegas, and I knew about the delegation. And I got a call one morning, and there was a Russian on the phone that had a very thick accent that was trying to talk to me, and he gave the phone to a young lady interpreter, and it turned out it was Max, and he was in Barstow, Nevada, and he was trying to connect with some biologists, some California biologists, and do a sheep tour on the Mojave National Preserve. And I happened to know the biologist and the state vet, and we worked out a meet, and then I ended up being their tour guide for the SCI convention. And that's really how I got involved with the Central Asian Initiative. It just happened that I knew some of the delegates and became readily acquainted with them, and we took them on a tour around some of the Southern Nevada water developments, and they got to see some sheep, and they thought that was all pretty cool. So you can't really do conservation for wild sheep without funding, and we had a donor of the Wild Sheep Foundation that came forward and wanted to fund our Kazakhstan initiative, and that individual gave us the funding to be able to get Kurt Alt on the ground there, get him meeting with some of the biologists, the Argali biologists in Kazakhstan, and we started working on a conservation plan, an Argali conservation plan, that was all through this donor that came forward, and it's been a long hard battle. As you know, there's been a change in government in Kazakhstan, and a lot of these regulations that we needed to get in place in order to sell conservation permits and create a revenue stream for conservation in Kazakhstan required a lot of regulations. A foreigner in Kazakhstan, you can't even touch a gun at the beginning of this process, and we've been making a lot of headway. We keep getting very close, and working our way through all of the various ministries in the government of Kazakhstan, and I think that we're very close right now. We've had I think that we've had 3 hunts of Argali of 3 different species that were kind of our pilot program to demonstrate revenue stream for conservation funding, and I think that it's made a big impact and is a model that other countries are now interested in following, like Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, that are interested in the model that we're creating in Kazakhstan, and are now stepping forward in a big way to create conservation programs for wild sheep in those countries as well.
Just out of curiosity, Brett, how impactful was COVID on this? It seemed to me that did play, we were trying to get, from my understanding, there was reps we were trying to get from Kazakhstan and maybe Tajik as well over to the U.S., even just for Sheep Week, that was impeded in some capacity. And then trying to get hunters over there was really challenging as well. Did COVID play a role in that, or wasn't really a factor?
It played a huge role in international travel, period. I have friends in northern British Columbia that, I'd been traveling up there every year for, 8 years or something like that, and that just ended. eliminated right out of the gate. So it's very difficult for international travel and for us to continue the face-to-face kind of camaraderie and working sessions pre-COVID that we had that were advancing the Central Asia Initiative to be able to perpetuate those during COVID. It was very problematic, and it caused us a slowdown, a lack of progress there for 2 years.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was kind of thinking that was a factor. Okay, Brett. So now, if we look, you spent 9 years on the board. You termed out with the foundation, but you're not one to rest on your laurels. So I know you're still heavily involved. There's committees that I serve on that I work with you on. But one of the ones that I find interesting, and there's been some new, the foundation, CEO Thornton and Chair Landris, they talk about, certainly Gray talks about maintaining our relevancy as a conservation organization. And, Chair Landris, as a new chair, he's got a number of initiatives that he's very bullish on, doing big stuff. I think he has a different name for that, which I won't use on the podcast today. But when we look at that, so you chair the Conservation Committee. And to me, that this is a really important committee. And from what I understand, there's some really significant changes coming out of that committee. Can you touch a little bit about, what your role is there and some of the things that you guys are looking at? I've had the opportunity to hear some of the work that you guys are doing, and it's really exciting. And I know Gray's certainly excited about it as well. Can you share a little bit on that for us?
Yeah, sure. It's really we've always had a conservation committee, but with the retirement of a couple of our conservation directors, it really caused us to take a step back and maybe rethink how the foundation approaches conservation and how we go through and execute our conservation goals, and how much of that is actually hands-on by the foundation, and how much of that might be hands-on through our chapters and affiliates. So what we've been tasked to do by then Chair Peregrine Wolf was to, if you could take a blank, excuse me, if you could take a blank dry marker board, and you could start this all over from ground zero without any of predetermined notions of how things are supposed to be. Try to start it over and do a reboot. So we've spent a lot of time on this committee. I'm the North American Conservation Chair. Jack Atchison Jr. is the International Conservation Chair. The other members of that committee, of course, Gray Thornton, of course, Kevin Hurley, but also past Chair Peregrine Wolf, and a few other key folks from the board of directors. The treasurer, Charlie Kelly, is on the committee, and we've spent a lot of time on restructuring how the foundation approaches conservation, which includes taking a hard look at our how the board is structured with respect to its interactions with staff and committees, and how can we streamline things to make them faster, better, more reactive to situations, and more responsive. That includes the grant and aid process. We've pretty much overhauled the grant and aid process. and we've included this legacy project concept that we're just testing it out this year. But the idea is to create legacy projects that are long-term commitments to specific regions, states or provinces, what have you, with a focus on a specific population of wild sheep. And I think Gray Thornton chimed it very well. He said, "Well, what would you do if you had $100,000 a year for 5 years? What would you do with that money to make the biggest impact possible on wild sheep in your neck of the woods?" And it's really caused all of the chapter and affiliates to take a step back and really think about long-term projects and long-term ideas as opposed to the fiscal year cycle. Even the foundation was in a fiscal year cycle. What are we going to do this fiscal year? Well, the chapters and affiliates were kind of in that type of a cycle too, where the limit of their thought processes were between this fundraising banquet to the next fundraising banquet, and what were we going to do in between? And now it's this new concept in conservation and conservation structure is giving everybody the opportunity to take a step back and start thinking long term. What can we do long term for wild sheep in southern British Columbia? What can we do long term for wild sheep in southern Nevada? And it's I think that it's really causing, I would call it a conservation revolution, where people are now they're thinking completely differently than what they thought a year ago or 2 years ago. We're starting to see people to be more bullish and more creative and more gutsy on how we can help wild sheep over the long term, and you start thinking of 5 years instead of 1 year. So it's been a huge impact, I think, industry wide in wild sheep.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've heard Gray use the term "be bold," and it's really exciting about. And I had the opportunity at our last board meeting to hear you talk about the vision for this conservation committee that you presented for us there, and I'm really excited about the work that you guys are doing, you guys and girls, reviewing this and looking with a new lens at it and a more holistic lens, and it's pretty exciting. And I think the resource is definitely going to benefit for it long term. So awesome, really, really exciting. Okay, so now you've finished up your 9-year term and you've termed out. You can't. It's a constitution and bylaw thing from the foundation, but you're still heavily involved. Today you're sitting across on the screen here. You got your fraternity shirt on. You're not resting on your laurels. Where does Brett Jefferson go from here in terms of what I know you're not hanging up the conservation stirrups just yet. So where do you go from here? What's your next step?
Well, I think one of my pet projects, or one of the things that I feel is very important to wild sheep in my neck of the woods is what happens to desert bighorn sheep on the Desert National Wildlife Refuge. And I have been working on the Desert National Wildlife Refuge actually for longer than I've been on the board of directors. So, as you know, it's the largest refuge in the lower 48. It's second in size to the ANWR in Alaska. The refuge was created specifically for the preservation, enhancement, and perpetuation of desert bighorn sheep. And in unfortunately, geography-wise, it butts right up to the Nevada Test and Training Range, which is a significant. It's the Area 51s and everything that the atomic bomb testing, everything. So it butts up to the Nevada Test and Training Range, and a portion of the refuge is actually under the jurisdiction of the Air Force in the valleys, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service still holds the jurisdiction of the mountains in we call it the NTTR, which is the Nevada Test and Training Range. There was a point when a number of years ago, the Air Force wanted to take most of the entire rest of the refuge and include it in the National Test and Training Range, and through the efforts of a broad coalition of organizations, some of whom the Wild Sheep Foundation and the Fraternity of the Desert Bighorn wouldn't normally work with, but they came together and worked together to oppose the Air Force on the refuge. And now we're in a position where, and I should mention Greg Schildwalker too, because without Greg Schildwalker's efforts in Washington, D.C., and with our Wild Sheep Foundation chapter and affiliate fly-ins and meeting face-to-face with our legislators in Washington, D.C., we never would have beat the Air Force back. And Greg made a huge impact on that effort that was very, very positive. But right now we've got a proposal. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Nevada Department of Wildlife, with the support of the Fraternity of the Desert Bighorn, has a proposal in the grant and aid process with Wild Sheep Foundation that we want to start collaring sheep on the refuge, getting a better understanding of the various populations of sheep and their sizes, what their migratory patterns are annually, because we want to grow sheep on the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, and that's something that we've been in this protection mode for so long and so many years that we haven't been in a conservation and enhancement mode, and now we're taking the steps forward to be in the conservation and enhancement mode of those desert bighorn sheep on the refuge, and in hopes of growing those populations so that they're available for you folks from British Columbia to come down and see, as well as your children and my children and my grandchildren. So it's the Desert National Wildlife Refuge is a big thing to me, and it's something that's going to remain on on my radar, I'm sure, for as long as I'm in the wild sheep conservation business.
Well, and Brett, one of the things that I've noticed about the NTTR and the Desert National Refuge is the passion that you have, and you have truly been a stalwart for this cause. And we have a ton of great people that are working on this. I know Larry Jacobs through LAC, and obviously Greg Schillwalker, and a ton of people at the fraternity have been, fighting this fight for a long time. But without somebody carrying that torch, that would have never happened, right? And so it goes to show you that if you truly care about something and you actually put the effort in, and you inspire people, that good things can happen for wildlife. And to me, this is a huge success story, and one that's been ongoing. One thing I'd be curious to know, Brett, is what are the sheep numbers doing in Nevada? That's been another huge success story. There's been significant growth. Can you talk a little bit about the growth you've seen, and maybe in the refuge itself, on what that looks like?
Yeah, there's the sheep in Nevada have had pretty good growth success since 1964. I want to say the fraternity was founded in 1964, and I'm pretty sure it's the oldest wild sheep conservation organization in the world. They were the forerunners. They were out in front of everybody. And at that time, there were, it's difficult to estimate because they had no population estimates, but they guessed that there were only about 2,000 or so desert bighorn sheep left in Nevada in 1964. And through, long-term conservation efforts and constructing water developments, throughout southern Nevada and on into central and northern Nevada, there are several bighorn sheep conservation groups. The oldest NBU, Nevada Bighorns Unlimited, is the Fallon chapter, and then there's NBU Reno, and then there's NBU Midas, and Elko Bighorns Unlimited. So all of those groups kind of spread out from across the north, from California to Utah, and then all the way down to the south to the fraternity, have just made incredible progress over the years on growing desert bighorn sheep and California bighorn sheep. So our desert population, was about, I think that it peaked a couple of years ago at about 15,000, and we went from 1964. I want to say that there were 2 tags, and we're up to about 280 tags now. A lot of huntable populations, and we've had a little bit of a problem the last couple of years with lack of precipitation. Water developments are great, but if it doesn't rain, the tanks don't fill, and there isn't water. So we've been in a really extreme drought situation the last 2 years. Up until this monsoon season. This monsoon season has been very positive, but we still have a few ranges that are of concern, that don't have enough water yet. But in talking with Mike Cox, who's our NDOW's bighorn sheep specialist, we estimate that we probably lost several thousand desert bighorn over the last 2 years due to lack of water and not being able to get water to all the sheep. We've done as you know, we've done a lot of water hauls northern Nevada and in southern Nevada, hauling water to specific ranges. It's really sad when you have to prioritize sheep populations and where you have X amount of dollars to haul water. And in order to haul that water, you've got to prioritize where you're going to haul it to. And unfortunately, that means that some herds, didn't get the benefit of emergency water hauls to water development. So we did lose some sheep the last couple of years, but still, the recovery of desert bighorn sheep in Nevada, overall over the long haul has been a success story. And it's primarily attributed to, those groups that I mentioned, those NGOs, their partnerships with the Nevada Department of Wildlife and the Nevada Department of Wildlife's commitment to wild sheep and enhancing and perpetuating those populations.
Awesome, Brett. Sorry, I had a technical issue there. So, Brett, you talked a lot about the great work that these different conservation organizations are doing. You talked about NDOW and being the true gentleman and humble individual you are. There's no mention of the great work that you have done and continue to do. So in 2018, you were the recipient of the Wayne Kirsch Conservation Award. Tell us a little bit about that. What was involved with that, and sort of how it feels to be kind of singled out. I know you always take the high road and talk about the team that you're part of, but you're an inspiration, Brett, with your dedication and commitment and the fire in your step when it comes to when there's a cause. Don't get in Brett Jefferson's way because he will run you over. So. Let's talk a little bit about that award and what it was like to receive that, to be part of that.
I'll do my best I'll do my best not to get emotional. That award is probably one of the high points of my conservation career. There's so many people to thank. For that award that nominated me and wrote letters for me, and advocated for me with the Kirsch Committee to receive that award. It occurred in 2018 when I was chairman of the board of directors of Wild Sheep Foundation, and I was also on the board of directors for the Fraternity of the Desert Bighorn at the time. And we had really done some pretty remarkable things conservation-wise in Nevada, both Wild Sheep Foundation and the Fraternity of the Desert Bighorn. And I'm just so blessed. There's so many incredible, my hero list are past recipients of the Wayne Kirsch Award. You can look at that award list and, Eddie Pribble, a charter member of the Fraternity of the Desert Bighorn. I think, he was one of the first recipients. Clint Bentley is on that list. I could just go on and on with the number of people that had an influence on me while I was working my way up in the conservation world, and helped me to be more effective and do a better job. And understand the business, because conservation is a business. It's not all just about sheep. It's about people that have a passion for wild sheep and getting results from those passions to make an impact on sheep. So yes, that I received that award actually. Brad Johnston, somebody that when I first started on the Nevada Bighorns Unlimited Board of Directors, he was on the board of directors with me, and he was chairman of the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners, and he presented the award to me. And that was a very special moment because he and I kind of started out in this conservation world, together at the same time. So it was very special, and it's just a huge honor.
That's awesome, Brett. Well, I have to say, in my opinion, it's well deserved, and I couldn't think of anyone more deserving. And it's I remember when you were receiving that award, and it was certainly exciting to see that, and really, really cool. So, with yourself, you've spent decades, literally decades, of putting sheep on the mountain. And, it's interesting that the foundation has the take one, put one back, I think. And what's that number, $5,000 or $5,500? You make a donation, and that's kind of what it takes to put a sheep on the mountain. And if I started adding up what Brett Jefferson himself was responsible for of putting on the mountain, I can't imagine. It's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of sheep. So, but you've never taken one off. You're a member of the Less Than One Club. You share that distinction with Steve on the call today. But I think that might be changing. So I was at the Life Member Breakfast this past Sheep Week, and the La Palmosa hunt, the Life Member Breakfast winner, they called a name we were familiar with. So you're going hunting in La Palmosa on your first, this will be your, you have a sheep tag, and you're going to go hopefully kill a monster ram with Emilio and his family down there. So how does that feel? What's that like? Is it surreal? Tell us about that experience. I can't even imagine to win that. And after all you put into sheep conservation, all you've given, and to take one off the mountain, I can't imagine. Tell us what that feels like.
Well, I'm pretty excited about the hunt. It was funny when, I was sitting around friends while the drawing was going on, and Gray was going on and on about, who the person was that was, without divulging who it was. And there were several people sitting around, and they said, that's you. And I'm like, no, no. And then he called my name, and I don't think my feet touched the ground for a week. So exciting, and so thrilled. Emilio Rangel and La Palmosa has done so much for wild sheep conservation throughout the United States and Canada. It's just incredible what they've done and what they've given, and their commitment to the individual and making an impact to the individual. So I remember when Darren Epps was drawn, and he's a pretty good friend of mine, and how thrilled I was for him, and I was very blessed that he was there too, and came up and congratulated me. So I'm just stoked beyond belief. My hunt dates are February 23rd is when we arrive at La Palmosa, and we're going to get after it pretty hard and exciting. So yeah, I'm just thrilled. I'm not even sure that I'm capable of explaining how I feel about it and how exciting it is. I've been waiting years to draw a sheep tag here in Nevada, and haven't been lucky enough to do that yet. So this is a huge opportunity. really excited.
I can't think of anyone more deserving, and I cannot wait to hear about the hunt. And I'd love to have you back on after. Keep us in mind, because we want to hear the whole story, hear all of it. So and I'll tell you, for your first sheep tag, that's a pretty solid sheep tag to be drawn for.
Yes,
that's unbelievable. So, but in my opinion, there's no one more deserving. Truly, there is no one more deserving than yourself, Brett. And, just an honor to have served with you on our board of directors and to continue to serve, in volunteer capacity now with the different committees we serve on. And I always look to you for your leadership and guidance. And it's always just an inspiration being around you when it comes to wild sheep. So thank you for all you do day in and day out and have done for literally decades for the resource.
Oh, thank you very much, Kyle. I really appreciate those kind words. And, none of us are really into this for ourselves. We're all into this for the resource and the people that we meet that are like-minded, that are committed and dedicated to the resource as well, like you and Steve. So thank you both very much for all that you do and continue to do for wild sheep.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Brett. And we're going to see you back in March. We're going to talk sheep again in March. We're going to talk about La Palmosa Desert Bighorn.
I'm looking
awesome.
forward to it.